big scary monster. Roar. Roar. Are you going to tell the people what's going on this week? Okay, very good to meet you. Thank you. All right. Awesome. All right, Mateo, we're going to have to let you go, man. It said in your contract that you would talk during an intro. Please bring in the talking Chewini. This guy's not getting it done. We dogs. Yes, your breath is horrible. I do agree. It is so bad. Can we put that away? Hello, hello, hello. I'm ready for the show, the show, the show. I'm ready for the show.
He's just chilling.
The show. Chewini's ready for the Chewini show. Episode 11, here we go.
Right across this country, into this starlight. 12,000 miles, turn back, do it again. No destination, it's just a journey. You were my lover and friend.
This is episode 11. We are framing the windows that we added to the Unicell. We are also building the booth with a brand new addition to that design this time. And we also had a gigantic storm roll through our area, so we used that as a leak test. Leak test 2.0.
Here we go.
Today is the booth, couch, bed building day. This one piece of furniture is easily the most versatile part of our bus. We've lived with this design in our own bus for almost 2 years now, and we just love it. I couldn't imagine not including this in one of our builds. It's so nice to just be able to choose to work at a booth or sit on the couch and watch a movie. And last spring, I had one of my best friends come and stay with us for 2 weeks, and she had her own guest bed, which is crazy in such a small space. This is a 5-in-1 piece of furniture, which is essential in a space this small to have an area that does all these different things. It can be a 2-person booth, a 4-person booth, a guest bed, a twin-sized guest bed, a U-shaped couch, or an L-shaped couch. So there's a lot going on here. The basics of the design is that we have 2 booth ends where the faces extend outward. There's a table that goes up and down in the center. This has a self-supporting leaf, and that kind of bridges the gap to make all of these longer options like the guest bed and the couches. So today I'm going to be building this design for the Unicell. We actually offer a downloadable plan that will give you step-by-step instructions of how to build this design for your own van, bus, box truck. It can fit in so many different spaces, and it can be so many different things, which is the coolest part of the whole thing. So I'm going to be working through the downloadable plan, making sure that everything is cohesive. I did this last year and released an update after I built from it. I'm going to do that again this year. I'm going to make just a few little tweaks to the design so that the top of each cube can hinge upward and you can access everything underneath it from the top down. It's just a few little changes, and then I will be updating the plan so that you guys can decide whether you want to hinge the top or keep the original design. So today I'm going to work through this. I'm going to triple check the downloadable plan. I'm going to make the updates for the hinged top, and then we will be putting out an updated version of the plan. So you can look for that very soon, but right now I've got to get started on making all the cuts. That's the first step, just to work through the cut list. So let's do it. The most time-consuming part of this whole project was just making all of the cuts. And this is where the downloadable plan comes in, because there is a cut list right there for you. You can just go down the list, make all the cuts for the frame and the facing, and that is a huge time saver.
Once all the cuts had been made, we moved on to the assembly process. Essentially, all you're doing here is building a skeleton out of wood and then skidding the fronts and the sides with plywood so it looks like one solid piece. This is a really strong way to build something like this instead of just screwing plywood together.
Come back into its hole.
Once the basic structure was finished, it was time to move on to a little modification that we decided to make this year. This was a suggestion that Drew made because he builds our entire power system underneath these two booth ends.
This is an idea we kicked around with the original design, but at that point we thought, let's keep it more simple. There's already a lot going on. The power system isn't something you should have to get at very often. Until now though, we've had to pull a few screws and pull that whole panel off if you're going to work on it. Not the biggest inconvenience, but definitely nicer to be able to lift that thing up like a hood of a car and just get right to work on what you're doing. You're not fumbling around for a screwdriver to remove those screws and take the whole panel off.
This was a redesign that Drew requested, and I went ahead and did it this year. It actually wasn't too complicated. The basics of having this hinged top was just lowering the entire frame and adding a secondary top onto the frame. And this is the hinged part. It's that entire sliding mechanism that actually hinges upward and comes back down to set into place. You can then slide it in and out normally, but I essentially added just another whole top to the design. So it's still the same dimensions, it's still the same height and width, but now you can just access everything inside of the booth from the top down a lot easier. The slides were in place and both the booth ends visually looked how they should, but now it was the most important part of this redesign was actually testing out how it functions. If the lid of the booth would lift, making sure that it doesn't rub on anything, making sure that it lifts freely, and making sure that the extensions both still slide out properly as it did before. The moment of truth here, actually walking up to it and lifting up that booth end, it was perfect. It was such a good moment. Actually having it in front of you for the first time was really exciting to walk up and lift that top. It hinged perfectly. Now everything under that booth end is just a lot more accessible, making sure that the sliding mechanism still worked just as it did before. Both booth ends looked exactly how they should. The extensions slid out, the tops hinged, and I was very, very happy.
I personally think this was a great upgrade to an already good design. It makes that space more accessible, so whether that's going to be something like ours where it's a power system or some other sort of storage, now it's a lot easier to get there and you could use it for whatever you wanted.
After testing out how it functions and being really excited about how it turned out, it was time to move on to painting because it has to match the rest of the build. Of course, we started with a coat of Bullseye 123 primer. This is the primer that we use under all of our paint. We think it works really well and it makes the paint go on a lot smoother. In the footage, you can see that I am using a foam roller right off the bat this time. I learned my lesson with those cabinets. Make sure your brain is engaged when you are picking out your paint rollers, and for cabinets and furniture, pretty much all the things that we paint in our builds, we use these foam rollers, so make sure you have some of those on hand. There was no sanding for me this time. I got it right on the first try. After the primer, I moved right on to that beautiful teal color that we picked out before. This is Water Garden by Magnolia Homes. It's kind of a blue-green teal color, but it's a little bit dark and moody as well. Every time that I paint a new piece of the build with this color, I love it more and more, and that's how you know that you've picked out a good color.
Like you're a friend of mine. Screen lights up when you come online. You ain't looking for a savior. Yeah, you know what you feel. Show me all your good behavior. It's all very well now, it's all very good. It's fun to pretend, and we probably should.
After all the building, designing, painting, it was time to actually bring the booth ends into the Unicell and give it a good test.
If you wanna last long, all time good high. Don't ask me why. Caroline, don't cry, baby, it's no concern. Oh, touch and go is what I know, but I can learn. I don't wanna cause trouble. I got a real nice attitude. I won't fuss, I won't struggle. It's all very well now, it's all very good. It's fun to pretend, and we probably should. When I get up, the lights come on, so take a good look.
Of course, Foreman Mateo had to give it the first test, and it was Mateo approved.
'Cause when I get up, the lights come on, so take a good look. 'Cause soon I'll be gone. Yeah, take a picture, baby, if you wanna last long. All time good high feels good.
The last little finishing touch is to add the flush mount handles, and this makes opening each side of the booth a lot easier than struggling to grab that piece of wood, and they look really nice. So once those are on there, it's really easy to slide it right open.
The last part of this whole design will be the table, which will be coming up in a future episode. That's kind of what bridges the gap in the middle. But for now, I'm just really proud that this booth is in the Unicell. That feels like a huge step.
I'm also really excited they're installed because that means I can finally start putting the components of the power system together. Once again, that acts as basically compartments to store all those things. So until that's in there, I can't really start assembling. But now they're there, I can start building the little shelves in there that I need, and I can put everything in, and sooner or later, we'll have this thing powered.
Now, we didn't go through every step of the design in this video, and that's because we already did that in the downloadable plan. This is a step-by-step build guide that walks you through every move you need to make to build this design yourself. It has a cut list, it has a purchase list, And we will be updating the plan to include this hinged top as an option. We are working on that update right now and it will be coming out very soon. You can check the description below for details. And all of our downloadable plans are available at ourwaytorome.com if you want to build any of these designs into your own bus or van. Next up was framing our windows, but before we did that, we had to decide what we wanted our final wall to be. In this build, we actually have a lot more open wall space than we've had in any build before. We decided on beadboard for this wall that will be above the booth, that's around that main taco truck window, our biggest window in the whole build. We've used beadboard in the past to add a little bit of character to the wall and make it just not straight plywood. It's really light, it's easy to cut, it's easy to use. The first thing I had to do was take the measurements for the whole area. Luckily everything was square, so this was just a really easy cut, and I made all of those cuts into the beadboard. I actually used a skill saw, which was way overkill because this beadboard is like cardboard, but it's a little too difficult to just cut it with a knife, so you do have to use a saw. Just felt like such overkill to use an actual wood saw. Once I got the larger piece cut, I used a jigsaw to cut out that middle section for the window, held it up to make sure it would fit, and it already added so much to that whole space. Just adding that beadboard with the slight pattern on it adds a ton.
I feel good, nothing weighs me down. I can't believe my luck right now. Red eyes while he said, don't you wanna have fun? Fool around with someone. Don't you wanna have fun? Never mind my dumb heart. It needs a little kickstart. 'Cause don't you wanna have fun?
The next step was framing out the windows. So we used 1x3s and we mitered the corners to get to 45-degree angles. This step is really nice. It really takes it from a vehicle window, RV window, shuttle bus window, whatever it may be, to feel like you're actually in a house. I know that in the shuttle buses, it definitely changed the feeling quite a bit, and we brought it back because it just feels really homey.
We also used the triangles that were left over from making those 45-degree cuts on the 1x3s and just stuck those into the corners, and so now the entire window is framed out because those Rec Pro windows, they have curved corners. So if you stick the little triangle pieces in there, now everything is boxed in and it looks really good. Now that we had the entire window boxed out on the face of the wall, I took small strips of wood and put them on the bottom, the sides, and the top of the inside of the window. The sill, if you're looking down at the window or to the right, left, or upwards into where it's framed out, you can see the seams of the walls and all the different layers of wood and beadboard that is on that wall. So it's nice to just do this extra step and have the whole window boxed out. It really does look like a house window. Now we have this big picture window that will be above our booth, couch, guest bed area. I then went ahead and did the exact same thing for the two kitchen windows. This had a divider in between because we do have two windows, but other than that, everything was exactly the same.
It burns, so give him something worse to kill his head with, make him forget somehow. Might be that another day she would have wished he stayed, but they're done. Sorry's won't be enough this time. Yeah, he's calling all his friends to get some action and distract him right now. He's fine, got Lucy on the line, let's get this started. Where's the party tonight? I feel good, nothing weighs me down. I can't believe my luck right now. Red eyes while he said, don't you wanna have fun? Fool around with someone. Don't you wanna have fun?
Once the entire windows were framed and finished, the triangles are in the corners, it really looks like a house kitchen. Like we said with the other window, it looks like a house window. And this kitchen space, now that we have the kitchen counter, the overhead cabinet, it's starting to look like a real kitchen.
Yeah, certainly one of those finishing touches that just culminates to it really feeling like your own space and your own house. After the windows, we moved on to framing out the doorway. We did this in a similar fashion, except we left the right side open for now, as there will be a dividing wall that will also act as a passage for the wires to go up from the rocker switch panel to all of the lights and everything above. There was also a small wall on the left side, about 6 or 8 inches, that we decided to use some of the cedar planks we had left over from the ceiling and put that on as the wall, and it just sort of warms up the entry space and it looks really nice.
Yeah, this was just an extra random wall space that we had and kind of went back and forth with what we wanted to do with it. Those extra cedar ends from the planks we used on the ceiling was really perfect. There is a huge thunderstorm coming through, so we are going to use that to water test the windows again. Make sure that the taco truck window doesn't leak, and also we finish the installation of the turn overland door. So we're also going to test that and make sure that everything is watertight. It's a perfect opportunity.
Now the light runs through my lashes. It's taken 40 years, blood, sweat and tears. You are the love. I can't show you how to start to find your way. I like the old-fashioned way. Give me that sweet love, those warm up and kisses. Oh, you are the love. Life has a quirky way. Circle breaks, we find a new day. And strangers we know become husbands. Every dance has its pace, interlace, intertwine. Now you can't save time. Run along, kiss. You two will be more than pairs one day.
A few episodes back, we did our initial leak test right after installing the windows and the door. Honestly, we were a little bit disappointed with the results of that test. Now, our door was not 100% installed. We had some deadbolts to put on the inside of our door frame that would actually suck the door into the side of the Unicell, and we were pretty confident that would completely seal the door. So now that we had that done, we had pulled all the little rubber stoppers out of the weep holes of the windows. We were ready for this real world leak test. Once we saw that nothing in the Unicell was leaking, we were just so ecstatic, because nothing is more of a bummer than putting all this effort into installing windows and doors and having leaks. So we were very, very excited after this storm passed. Overall, leak test number 2 was a success.
That wraps it up for episode 11. The windows are framed, the booth has been built, and another leak test looking good. Very excited to now be able to start building within that booth compartment and everything else, and it's going to be a good week ahead.
The booth project this week set us up really well for upcoming episodes of Drew's power system, and I know that you are really, really excited to get that moving, get the whole thing wired, get all of those components in place, and hook up those beautiful solar panels that we have on the roof.
We are looking forward to the weeks ahead and the projects to come, and thanks again for being here with us, and we will see you guys in about a week.